Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And a half hour brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. The best in new and the best insurance coverage out there and the best in customer service because they want to save you money wherever they can. Now, that's customer service. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Well, any opportunity I get to spend, I don't care if it's minutes or a couple hours or whatever, with Chris Wheeler, I will take it. Sir, welcome, my friend. Great to have you back.
And I totally agree that I enjoyed my time with you, Steve. I wish we could have more of it personally, but this will suffice for what we can do right now.
You know what? I'm going to get down. I'm going to get down to a Phillies game this summer, so I'm going to make sure I'm down there and I'll coordinate with you and see if we can work it out. All right?
Yeah. You come to a Philly, right? I'll be back about mid-July.
Good.
So if you come down, I would love to do that. That would be fun. We'll catch up.
Absolutely. Right. So I'm talking to my broadcasting class this morning, and they learned nothing because I was talking. But
yeah, right.
I told them that you were going to be on the show today, and I told them what the first question was going to be. In a world where we know what everybody else is doing, can you explain to me why Major League Baseball decides the opening day is going to be the same day as the NCAA basketball Sweet 16 instead of starting either yesterday or today? Can you explain that to me when there's nothing else going on where you can have the whole day to yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised that anybody in your class would even know who I am at this point.
They're Philly fans, man. They know what the heck's going on. Yeah,
their parents told them or something.
Well, they were disappointed you knew me. No,
for a long time.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't answer. I don't know why. Look, there's so many things about sports nowadays, including our game. Baseball that I don't understand why they do. Does any thought even go into that?
No.
And the one thing I didn't, they are playing a lot of afternoon games tomorrow. So maybe they're staying away from night basketball or something. I don't. Hey, you know what? I just be grasping at that one, and I try not to do that as much as possible because sometimes you have to. Yeah. But I don't know that there would be any consideration in why they would do that or not. So you have to tell your students you had somebody else that had no clue.
No, and that's exactly what I thought the answer was going to be. I don't think the people that run Major League Baseball, I've always questioned whether they understood their surroundings. That's like, hey, that's how I look. Like, you have 162 of these. You can make a big deal out of it if you start on this date. It's like I always said at Christmas time, the salespeople would always come up and go, I need to have this commercial done by next week, Christmas next week. I said, well, just so you know, next year Christmas is December 25th, too.
Right. I can do these in September for December. I'm capable of that. Yeah, I don't. Look, every once in a while I think MLB does try to stay away from some things. I think they've gotten more keeping the World Series away from Sunday night, Sunday NFL games and that sort of stuff. But as far as the opening day, I know what you're saying. You could have it all by yourself. It'd be that one day of the year where you'd say, boy, we got the only thing in town, and there's nothing else to get in the way. But I think more than, and this is just me, I don't know. I think more than anything, baseball is becoming more localized, that
Yes.
it's very important to the local networks, to the local telecast, to the local broadcast, as opposed to the big national audience, because of just the way the sport is nowadays. And, the NFL, that you can have the two smallest teams in the league playing on any day, and you'll have all these people that don't live there or in those markets care about it. Where I think baseball, I may be totally off on this, but I think baseball is becoming more of a market-oriented sport, if that makes any sense.
Well, no, I think the NHL's like that. Maybe more market-oriented. In some small way, the NBA is, unless you're the Lakers, because that's all the ESPN ever talks about is the Lakers. Like, there's 350 million people in this country. I guarantee you they aren't all Lakers fans.
Right.
That's just me.
Well, they're not all Yankees and Mets fans in baseball either.
Exactly.
Or Dodgers.
Exactly.
So I think that's what you come down to.
Right, exactly. As a broadcaster, how do you approach 162? I mean,
Yeah.
Because every time I listened to you, and it was often over the time, I always felt that part of your brilliance was the ability to take each game as an entity unto itself, while I hear other people and they're just treating it like another day at the office.
Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Here's the thing. I guess there's a couple things. Number one is every day that I went in there, I considered myself lucky, because I thought, geez, I'm a kid from the Philadelphia area, and I'm working for my hometown team, and I don't have a real job. And if it's hot or it's cold or something, nobody wants to hear that, because people have had real jobs all day, and they don't want to hear me complain about the weather or whatever, anything's wrong or those kind of things. And I think another thing was in our sport, and I'm sure, you probably deal with it too in football and basketball, but especially in baseball, for whatever reason, I could have seen 1,000 games, and all of a sudden something would happen. You go, I've never seen that before.
Yep.
And that was another thing about going in there every day was, well, maybe I'll see something tonight I've never seen, or maybe a guy will pitch a no-hitter tonight, or a perfect game, or something like that. Yeah, so I never took it for granted. I always thought that it was an honor and a privilege to be able to do a major league games for your hometown team. And the sport itself fascinated me in ways that it doesn't others. A real baseball fan that you are, you understand exactly what I mean. So I just never had we started out in my early days to do 162, and that changed a little bit because I got more days off as it went along. But I planned to do 162 when the season started, and that's what I did.
And I tell them in class that every game has its own personality, and it's your job to capture the personality. I said no two are alike. Now, you and I both know that there's some days where, that looked like the one 2 weeks ago. but I'm not going to tell them that. I don't want to ruin it for them.
Or you're in California and you got all this stuff planned. Here's a game, here's the matchups. You do your opening, then you come back. And you go out 1, 2, 3, and they get 8 in the first. And you can hear you can. In the old days, you could hear the TVs clicking off of the radios. And now you're thinking, well, I better go to my B material right now.
Yeah, because it took on the personality you didn't hope it would.
Exactly. And that's one of the great charms of what we do and what I did and what you still do is the unknowns. Because there's going to be some knowns all the time. You get 3 outs in an inning, and you play X amount of innings and hits. But in football, you've got your meeting, you've got your game plan. You and Jack talk about, well, this is the strengths and weaknesses of it, and then it goes out there, and it's nothing like you thought it was going to be, and then you just have to vamp a little bit. So I think that's one of the skills involved, and luckily what I was able to do and what you guys do.
Well, you know what I tell people? So, we'll give some keys to the game, and then it doesn't pan out. Well, that's because if they followed the key, it would have been. It's like, see, you can flip it around.
That's why I laugh about the, they have these network games and they have these 3-hour production meetings. Well, and then something happens like what I just said. Early on in the game, you might as well throw all that out the window. But
that's exactly right.
One of the abilities to do what I did, and what you do for a living is you have to improvise. You have to be Byram Som, who was a great announcer for the Phillies. He is. When I first started, said, "Boys, you got to be flexible in this business," and he was right. You can't be set in your ways and what you're going to do, and sometimes you have to. You don't go to the game. You have to let the game come to you.
Poor Bayasama. He may have announced more losing games than anybody in the history of between the A's and the Jeez.
Poor guy. He opted to do the A's in 1950 when the Phillies won the World Series. Went to the World Series, and Gene Kelly got to do the Phillies games that year.
Oh, poor Bay. But you know what? He was doing baseball. It's like, to me, it's like somebody will say, having a tough day in the golf course, yes, but I'm playing golf. That's all right. I couldn't agree more with that. As I sit here in my place looking out at my golf course right now, thinking I may just go out there and test that theory later. Go ahead, test it. Right? Text me later how the test went.
Yeah. Hey, look, baseball season's coming up. You love the game like I do. Yeah. And everybody has their first games that I still think there's still a charm, even though, as you said, we're going up against the NCAA. Yeah. But there's still a charm in opening day in our sport that is not in any other sport. And yes, even though I'm not a part of it anymore, I'm looking forward to it.
No, and I am too. And just very briefly on the Phillies, there really isn't all the change for them has been subtle, so it's not a dramatic changeover in the team. So what's your thought on the type of team they have built and the ability to sustain 162 games of it?
Well, yeah, the changes are subtle because for the first time in 3 years, I think 4 years, they didn't go out and sign a big-name free agent. Just decided that was not the way to go for a variety of reasons. But they brought in a pitcher, Jesus Luzardo from Miami. He's really good. He could really be good, hopefully. They got an outfielder named Max Kepler from Minnesota who saw him play a lot down here this year in spring training, and he can do some things. He's going to help the team. And another guy is a guy named Jordan Romano, who was a very, very good pitcher with Toronto for a number of years and was hurt a little bit last year. So those three guys, I think, will contribute. But it's one of those window opportunity teams, Steve. It's closing. You're getting to the point where they're getting into their 30s. 3 big-name players are free agents this year. Some of the better players also are getting into their upper 20s. So you're getting to the point where you do have a window, and that's not a cliche. It's true in our game. And they have it right now. It's getting to the point where they need to get to this World Series and maybe win a World Series because they're going to start losing guys, and other guys' skills are going to start to diminish.
Yeah, and then you get all these stories. Strom injures fingernail while packing. Not good.
Really?
Ranger Suarez opened season on IL with sore back. It's just the nature. It's such a long season. These things are going to happen.
And it's all true stuff, unlike when I first started in the 70s, a guy would show up the next day with a black eye, and he'd say he walked into a wall.
Yeah, sure he did.
Nobody said anything.
Yeah, nobody said a word.
Where was he last night? Oh, that doesn't matter.
Oh, that's a silly question.
Yeah. A fingernail in a suit. Yeah, he was all set to pitch here on Monday, pitch an inning. And I kind of looked at the sheets he gave us before the game, and he wasn't on. And I thought, I wonder why he's not pitching today. He said he's healthy. Then they announced he had hurt a fingernail packing a suitcase. I guess if it had been a home game, they didn't have to pack. They had to pack to get out of here. So it was going to happen anyway.
Yeah. This is where, under the agreement of fairness, you get to ask me questions.
Yeah.
Listen to him. He's ready to jump.
It's funny. I was thinking about that this morning, obviously. And the last time you and I talked, we talked so much about stuff that you covered on my question, and the thing, I guess spring practice opened last night, so you were obviously there.
Yep.
What are you What are you looking at right now for this football team going forward to be even better than they were last year, which is kind of hard to do?
Well, roster retention's important in this sport. Now, we just talked about the Phillies being stable going into the season, and that's the part with Penn State that has happened, and that is the roster retention part. So I'm looking out there. There's Drew Aller, an experienced quarterback, second year in Andy Koltonicki's offense. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen busted long runs last night. Like, I'm sitting there going, and the running joke I have with Wayne Sebastianelli.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'll look over at Seabass, and every time Singleton flies by in a press, I go, he stinks. Katron Allen, he'll fly by, and go, he stinks.
Yeah.
So I'm looking to see, how does Kyron Hudson do? I'm looking to see, how does Devontae Ross do, the two new wideouts. I want to see the emergence of a Peter Gonzalez. I want to see a healthier Caden Saunders. So I'm talking about wideouts now. The combinations on the offensive line, I'm looking at that. I want to see Xavier Gilliam and how he pairs up with Zane Durant. I finally get an opportunity to see Liam Andrews now finally play at defensive tackle. I want to see the improvement of Max Granville, Jalen Harvey, a healthy Zariah Fisher, a healthy Keon Wiley. I want to see how King Mack mixes in the secondary in a 3-safety look with Zakee Wheatley and DeJuan Lane. Those are some of the things I'm looking at, and I want to see how Jim Knowles coaches and interacts with the team along the way. So those are some of the things I was looking at last night, and it's, as you know as well as anybody, it's 1 down and 14 to go. And it's the full body of it that comes into play, because I'll never forget a blue-white game where Pat Devlin went out and lit the whole place up, and it was great in a blue-white game, and Darryl Clark did nothing. Then, of course, Darryl Clark ends up winning the job, and it's like, well, I saw the blue-white game, and I said, hey, I saw the other 14 practices. I thought Clark won the job after the third practice, and I told Darryl that. Right? He said, when did you think I won the job? I said, after the third spring practice. Right?
What's going on right now with college football and the elimination of these spring games? I saw where Penn State's going to have one, but not quote-unquote televise it, that they seem to be de-emphasizing them. Why is this?
This is going to – I think it's because it's a long year. And with the transfer portal – and by the way, Penn State's spring game will be during the transfer portal period. The portal will open up before they play the spring game. And you're like, okay. So they will have a modified type of spring game. Others, like Texas, Michigan State, Nebraska, won't have one at all. I think what you're going to see, Wheels, is more college programs opting toward an OTA model like the NFL has, but also the possibility that you may have. In the NFL, they'll have these practice days against opponents. The Steelers usually have Washington. They'll bring in and do like a practice day.
Yeah.
You may see some practice days like that coming up, not this year, but down the road where they'll bring you in for a day where you got competition against somebody else in a structured open practice situation. Just to, you may see more of that coming up. Like, I know Colorado and Syracuse have talked about doing it.
One thing I wanted to ask you too before we run out of time is, I know you have to be careful talking about injuries because James, he doesn't like talking about injuries. But do you see some things there where you see some guys that maybe got a little bit banged up last year, you might be getting back this year?
Yeah. What happened was right after the Orange Bowl, those who needed to have something done had it done right away. Mm-hmm. And that's always important. For example, Drew Shelton last year. So let's go back to somebody who's completely healthy right now. Drew Shelton last year had everything done right after the Peach Bowl, like right away, which bought him the 2 extra weeks he needed Didn't do much during the course of the spring. When training camp came around, he was ready to go. May have taken him about a month to get back into the swing of doing things again. But then you look at the last 3 months of the season, October, November, December, into early January. Drew Shelton played at a high level. So you've got a couple of guys that fall into that category. And because they had it done right away, that means that they'll be able to get to, pick a month, May, and get themselves back into full swing instead of waiting a little bit. And then by waiting, it delays their return. So because they had things done early, right, they may not be able to go now, but they're on a quicker path right now.
Well, that's good because, you know some guy like I don't know this, but I mean a guy like Anthony Donka going down last year late like that. You wonder, well, will he be ready to play in the fall? And you explained it right there. You get stuff done right away, and then you don't go through spring ball necessarily, but hopefully be ready for the fall.
Right, and he's one I really I'm not going to have a gauge on because his was a little bit more difficult than a couple of guys I'm thinking about, where I just know that, that in May they're going to be absolutely ready to go. When it's a lower body injury like that, takes a little bit longer. But I'll tell you this, he was out there jumping up and down yesterday when they made a couple of blocks on long runs. He wasn't participating, but he was.
That's got to kill those guys when they're not out there.
You know that. That's the hardest part is when guys are hurt, they feel like they're separated from the team. You know, and keeping involved. My friend, total pleasure as always. We will talk again soon, and we'll see each other soon. How about that?
I hope so. Well, let's keep in touch. Yeah, anytime for the show, you know that. And let's keep in touch, and maybe we can catch up down at the ballpark this year.
Sounds great. Thanks, Wheels.
Okay, Steve, anytime.
He is the best. He is the best. You can't ask for a better friend in the world. He's just tremendous. The great Chris Wheeler. More in the next half hour. Got a lot of movement and coaches in college basketball, 1,100 players in the transfer portal, but Todd Hummel didn't transfer, so we're still with him.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.